So this is Chaz Rudich, Chair of the Newberry Council on Aging Board of Directors. It is 1:05 on Monday, May 18th, 2020, and we're going to begin our meeting. And members, whenever I call your name, please let me know that you're here. Jerry Dorr. Okay, no Jerry. Dee Dee Heatwalt.
Yes.
Joyce Macheros.
Yes.
Evelyn Noyes, Vice Chair.
Yes.
Sandy Small, Secretary.
Present.
And staff members. Maggie Malley, Director.
I am here.
And we have no speakers today. So just as an introduction, this is the open meeting of the Newberry Council on Aging Board of Directors for Monday, May 18th, 2020. And this meeting is being conducted remotely, consistent with the governor's executive order of March 12th, due to the current state of the emergency. In order to mitigate transmission of the COVID virus, we've been advised by and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend all public gatherings, and as such, the governor ordered the suspension of the requirement for the open meeting law. This meeting does allow for public comments. It does not appear at this time that we have any public members attending, and this is a Zoom meeting and it is being recorded. I will review each item of the agenda and allow the speaker to present. And following the presentation, if we need a vote or if there's any questions, I will ask each of you in order if you have any comments. All right, we will go ahead and begin. And our first order is to review and approve the meeting minutes from February 10th, 2020. So I'll give everybody just a few minutes to review that information.
I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes of the February 12th meeting.
Evelyn Noyes has made the motion that we accept the minutes,
I second.
and Joyce has seconded it. And Dee Dee?
Yep.
All right, and I agree, and Sandy?
Yes.
All right, the minutes have been accepted. Our next item is, I'm going to turn it over to Maggie Malley to review the business and expenses since the last meeting.
Thank you, Chaz. Expenses since our meeting in February, we're referencing the expenditure report that is current through April 30th, 2020. There have not been many bills that have been presented and submitted since we have been closed to the public in the middle of March. I'm looking for those expenditures. There were bottled water in April, subscription to the Daily News, which is now digital only subscription as of the beginning of May. And so far, I'm sorry, there is one more expense, which I don't believe shows on this expense report. There was one more expenditure, which was $1,000 to fund the postage account, the bulk mailing account for the next news mailer, which should be going out hopefully later this week. But that is it for expenses for the moment, besides wages. There will probably be more expenses coming up shortly in the next week.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. And Dee Dee, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thanks for asking.
Joyce?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Evelyn?
I'm fine, thank you.
And Sandy?
Do you feel that there will be some odd expenses due to the fact of the shutdown and your responses to help out the people?
So far, no. We haven't had any expenses that would be specific to this pandemic. We had been advised earlier when we first, when the town, with the first activation notice of closure, that were there any expenses that were specific to, that were unusual and had to do, specifically with operation around this pandemic, we were to earmark them, at least keep track of them, to let the emergency management team know what those expenses were for, specific to the pandemic. We haven't incurred anything specific to that. That being said, I don't think that moving forward, looking at programming, for example, which is, coming up on our agenda, what a senior center will look like moving forward, programming, that wouldn't be, I don't think that would fall under the heading of unusual.
No, thank you. I was just thinking that maybe there was something specific that had cropped up.
No, we actually had a donation of cloth masks. So for the volunteer grocery shoppers, for employees who don't have more than one mask, I've been able to give them an extra. And for a few seniors who have reached out saying that they've been having difficulty finding masks, so we haven't had to purchase any. We still have a small stock of them. I don't know what that will look like moving forward. Again, that might be something that could be perhaps funded through the Friends group. I think masks right now might be considered, an expense that would be earmarked and set aside as having to do specifically with the pandemic, that we wouldn't have needed otherwise.
Okay, thank you.
Maggie, before we move on to the nominations, do you want to talk about the current efforts? Because you just started to do it, so I think it's easier just to move forward and get that out of the way.
Okay. We have, as I may have mentioned in the couple of updates that I've sent out over the last week, reassurance wellness calls have been the primary focus, with staff members, all except the Meals on Wheels driver, who's continued to do her route with with a little bit added on there for her. But we have been doing wellness calls, and there's a small crew of volunteers who have been added to that, so they're making wellness calls. And it's interesting to note that the calls have become a little bit longer as we've been, self-isolating. People opening up and needing to talk. I think it's served nicely for emotional reassurance. The volunteer grocery shoppers, that's been wonderful, and so far we haven't had too many requests. They've not been overwhelmed. We have these 4 very nice people. So that's going nicely, and the residents that they're shopping for are very pleased. The food pantry has, completely picked up grocery needs for people who didn't have family or neighbors who were able to. They've been tremendous, and they've got quite a huge volunteer crew, a number of which are new to them because they've been home, either students or people who were furloughed or what have you. So the First Parish Church Food Pantry, tremendous. So that's what we've been doing, and the news mailer going out, asks residents if they'd like reassurance calls. As we think we're all aware, this isn't just going to stop. People aren't just going to come rushing out of their homes and going back out to the market and things like that. So for folks who would like a call, people we're not aware of, this newsletter may, increase requests for that, which is wonderful. And then beyond that, I don't know, Chaz, if you want to talk about, what we might look at doing moving forward for, virtual options for people.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. Dee Dee, did you have any questions about that?
No, I think that, I think it was just interesting to just hear what Maggie was saying. I hadn't really kind of thought about that, so good to know.
And Joyce?
It was really good to hear. I've been naturally wondering about how they were all doing, and it sounds like everything has been going well. So it's very good to hear that.
And Evelyn?
I think I'd just like to know how Maggie feels about, because I know when I found myself in this position, I thought about things that I wish I had done different. And so going forward, if this is going to continue, what do you feel you wish you had done different, Maggie? Or maybe I should phrase it different and say, what did you wish you were more prepared for?
That is an excellent question.
Yeah.
I think that we had one person making reassurance calls before, for several years, and we were certainly aware of how vital that particular service is. During this pandemic, it has become more apparent that even short of, people over, all of us isolating, that people really do like to have someone to talk about concerns with separate of the pandemic. So I think that, perhaps we could have offered reassurance calls more broadly, or perhaps people didn't take advantage of it. We'd offered it, but I don't know. That's been kind of interesting to note, and it has evolved over the weeks. As I said previously, how much longer the calls have become, and how people have opened up about things, broad topics about things that they're concerned about. I think we didn't realize how many people might like to have that option. So this has certainly highlighted that. What else could we have been better prepared for? The volunteer grocery shoppers came together fairly quickly, actually. We never had a plan for that. There used to be a grocery shopper or two It predates my time here at the Council on Aging, but that is a nice thing to have. So that's certainly being reinvigorated, and I think these 4 volunteers would be interested in continuing that. So again, that it's sparked itself, but it's nice to take a look at that and make note of the fact that it's a nice thing to offer. I'll have to think a bit more on how we could have been better prepared. Again, everything, and looking at things that are popping up for ideas. It would have been great if we had virtual programming in place, but we will moving forward, because I think that that's going to be somewhat essential for the time being anyway, to offer things virtually for people on local cable TV. So that leads into the, what does the future look like for programming, certainly. I don't know that I really answered your question.
Yeah, one thing that I was surprised at was I thought the elderly got their medicines delivered, but I was surprised at the number of people that did not have them delivered. Is that a process that's difficult to do, or is it something people don't know how to do? I'm just curious.
That is an interesting question. We had a few people early on in March calling about pharmacy pickups. If we had someone who could do that for them. There are very few independent pharmacies anymore, and the independent ones in our area do deliver. At least one pharmacy, one of the chain pharmacies in Newburyport does deliver, but the other large chain does not. So that was, a bit of a, walking through it with people on the phone, whether they wanted to make the change or not. Ultimately, a few of them opted to have these volunteer shoppers pick up prescriptions for them. As far as doing prescriptions by mail, that's something that we hadn't, I don't think not since I've been here, have included much of that in the newsletter, how people can do that. We're aware that there are people doing it. We've spoken with people over the last weeks, with folks who are doing that. I think that they, just for the couple that I spoke with, they went that route for efficiency and for cost. But that's something we could certainly explore and at least give people information about that, and that would be much more effective for people should this happen again, or just moving forward so that they have fewer trips to public places.
Right. Okay.
Thank you. And Sandy.
I think it would be a good idea for us looking forward to outline, maybe perhaps have like survival kits ready or outline what that should be. And so if there is another incident like this, I don't see where we could hold all that kind of stuff, but didn't you say, Maggie, or someone said that people had gone out to different residents and delivered some kind of a survival, like cans of soup? Who did that? Was that the pantry?
Rowley.
Oh. See, I think that was a great idea. And although we, of course, not only we don't have the space, but it would be too expensive to try to get that stuff all ready. But if we had an idea of stuff, then I think, that would be, I think that's a great thing just to send out, to take out.
I can't remember when we did. We included in the newsletter at some point over the last few years a bit of information on an emergency kit or just emergency planning. In the case of a storm, in case of a power outage, that type of thing. If people were unable to get groceries in and out or prescriptions in and out. And I think that those lists are wonderful in the abstract, but it's more challenging to actually put a list together, with your emergency contacts, have family help you with putting a list together, and that kind of ties into these survival kits. I think the survival kit, the couple of towns that I'm aware of who did that early on, was really almost more just an emotional reassurance that we're here. The items in the kits, weren't anything that were particularly essential, but I think the emotional component, as we've learned just from the wellness calls, that's really come to the fore as the large need, just to reassure people that you're not alone. We're thinking of you, and we're here for you if you have questions. So yeah, survival kit, thinking about what that looks like, and again, how that's funded. Is it funded through donations, or is it? I don't remember how these towns have, put kits together quickly, and had a dozen items in a kit ready to go.
I remember years ago, the Council on Aging, I can't even remember who was chair at that time, but we had these bags. They were, I'm not sure if they were Friends bags or just said Newbury Council on Aging. But anyways, we had made up survival packs and given them to the people, to the elderly. And
Okay.
I can't remember now what was in it. I'll have to think about that one. But we could also kind of, what's the word I want? Just like frame it to what we've just experienced. And for my tenants, I always get a list together for them every year in the fall, like a winter survival kit. Not actually the kit, but just some suggestions on what they should be doing. So maybe we can put something together based on our experiences of the past few weeks.
Even if it's a checklist, I think it's great. I have another question. You said the reassurance calls were longer. When you set up the calls and say it's a repeat call, is it the same person calling the same person? So they would develop a little familiarity?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that, that is certainly a big piece of it, that I think people are feeling comfortable and familiar, so therefore the conversations become longer.
Nancy, I have a question.
Sure.
Oh, hi, Jerry.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late, but I have a question. Are we talking about putting together a virus emergency kit or a survival kit? Because they're two separate things.
This is true.
I was suggesting a general one.
No, because a virus kit, like right now, would include like masks, handy wipe, hand sanitizer, and plastic and gloves. Now, that's a very small, easy package to put together and to maintain someplace.
We could do that.
But it's not the whole picture, Jerry, either.
No, I agree.
But you're right, it is kind of two separate things. Snowstorm and the virus are not the same.
Right. just making some notes here. We could do a kit like that, because I think we probably all agree that a lot of the precautions that we are taking now are most likely going to be in effect for quite a while.
I agree. Absolutely.
So a kit like that, specific to precautions, could certainly be done.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. It looks like we've covered some of the other stuff on the agenda item. I would like to ask one of the space planning committee members to update us on anything that you've been thinking about, and also looking towards the future, as far as what can we be doing to work with our current space for the time being. Just wanted to get your thoughts. So if Joyce, Evelyn, or Sandy, do any of you want to go ahead and take the lead on that?
Well, I'll start out
Oh.
with, I'm sorry, Ed, mine's going to be very short.
No, I
because-
didn't have anything to say.
Okay.
Or maybe you can add to it to help me out here. But we have actually completed our space planning report. And all we have to do now at this point is print it and present it to the board for their review. We were hoping that maybe by June we may have a meeting in person, but I'm not sure that was going to happen or will be happening. But we could make arrangements then to drop each board member a copy of it. But since the virus came into light, I and the others, we had mentioned that after talking to Maggie, perhaps we should have some additional information on that. So that's where we're at. We had completed it when I wasn't thinking any more of it, other than when the virus came, that maybe we should be giving some thoughts to add some additional information.
All right.
So, Sandy, you got anything you'd like to add?
No, I think you've pretty much covered it.
Okay. Have you all set, dear?
I'm all set.
All right, so that's where we're at.
Thank you. Dee Dee, do you have any questions for the group?
I don't know.
All
But
right.
it sounds like, things are kind of moving on a few fronts, so that's always good.
All right, thank you. And Jerry, do you have any questions for the Space
No.
Planning Committee?
It's just nice to see everybody's face.
Great. All right.
How about you, Chaz? Do you have?
No. At this point, is there any chance you guys could send it electronically?
We talked about that. It might be a little bit confusing, and I would have no
Okay.
problem delivering it to mailboxes.
Thank
The
you.
reason why we thought about doing it, but because we have pictures and
Okay.
it's just like piecemeal at this point. So I think it would be understood a little more clear if it was a hard copy.
Okay. Thank
Maybe
you.
it's just an old me that likes
No.
the paper in front of me. I don't know.
You're
But
not
now,
alone.
do have to give some additional thought onto what we should add,
Right.
pertinent to the world of today, and how that does affect our space, or would it have a bearing on it? Or is it not really relevant to space? It's a whole separate matter.
I think it definitely is both. As far as how the town will look at things going forward will also be a determination on how ready and willing they are to assist with moving forward in a new space or a refurbished space. But I think also, as Maggie had mentioned earlier, virtual means of engagement, whether it's, not only just for our meetings, but also looking at other ways of providing programming to consumers, whether it's virtually through meetings like this or on the television site. There's going to be different opportunities to start engaging other folks in that aren't able to get into the space physically, or those who just may choose not to do that and enjoy doing stuff virtually. I know that there are going to be folks as well who really are just going to want to come into the senior center.
Right.
I think it also opens up the opportunity, as far as, not only reopening, but also looking at the needs moving forward, is looking at some of those other opportunities that we've all been talking about over the years as far as intergenerational collaboration, and looking at some of the seniors who want to start using the new technology, but they need somebody to guide them through that. And I think that would be a wonderful opportunity for some of the students at the elementary school all the way up to the high school to help provide that support for them.
That does sound like that would be nice. I could even use that.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's just get what we have out, and then we'll bring it back to the table and get some input on how we add additional information as far as space and in a disaster that might happen again someday, or this one isn't even over yet.
That's right. Thank you.
Chaz, I know Governor Baker started opening up today. I haven't read his report yet. Does anyone know, did he, are we able to have not town meetings, our meetings in person now, or like is the town hall open?
I kind of got an upgrade. I was just reading about it. It's 4 phases. But the first phase, they're going to start to allow meetings, but of no more than 10 people.
Well, that's us.
Yeah.
And town employees are back in their respective offices as of today.
Okay.
But still closed to the public, closed to visitors, closed to, vendors, guests, until at least, the decision will be made for June 1st as to whether that is extended or how a reopening of that nature will look. And that's, town offices have been addressing that, in some measure already. People making appointments for various services. So there's just one person at a time. I'm not sure what that will be like for the senior center.
And I think we're still waiting for advice from our administrator with regard to what does today's announcement mean for the town, if anything different too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But since we're under 10 people, we should be able to have our Council on Aging meetings at the school, right?
As long as we can socially distance.
And is the school open?
And the not to us, no. They're not here on a regular basis. I could make arrangements with the school, perhaps, to use the conference room that we're used to, which would allow us certainly better social distancing. And I can have a conversation with them about that, because then it requires sanitizing the space after, before and after we use it.
You might want to talk with Mike Riley on that too, Maggie.
Right. Okay. I'm going to put that in my notes.
Well, since Maggie, you actually go into our council space, right?
Yes.
Okay, so we could even have the meeting there since we don't have to worry about people coming in.
Yeah, right.
And there's
don't
certainly
have-
enough space there for us to sit apart.
There is the only, yeah, we could do that since people aren't coming in, you know.
Have our own table.
Right, I was going to say we can all sit at different tables. Exactly. We would have to videotape it, so we'd have to make that work, you know, for line of sight for the camera. But
Sure.
we could probably figure that out.
And Maggie, is Gail and Janet coming into the office?
Yeah, Janet is not today. We needed to figure out. I needed to figure out their workspace, the main workspace. So
Okay.
the DPW came this morning, and the fire department came earlier. They came before 9 o'clock to fog the space with that you know, fine mist of disinfectant. And they also did the van, which is out right now on a medical run, dropping somebody to an appointment. Don't have any good options at the moment that are low cost for getting people to medical appointments, and the NEAT program is still suspended for the time being. So that's to be continued. But so the space is freshly sanitized. Gail and Janet and I have masks. The van driver has a mask. She didn't even come in because I gave her what she needed. I put it on the seat of the van, and she's going to sanitize the van when she's done with this run today. What was the other thing? The DPW came and put a partition wall between Gail and Janet's work areas. So it's sort of a short-term solution, but it's a solution. So that allows them to be in the same space, the same setup that they're used to, but they don't have to wear a mask while they're at their desk and on their phones.
Okay, thank you. All right. Before we do the nominations, just going to open it up. Jerry, do you have anything else that you would like to add or question?
No?
Okay. Dee Dee?
No, I don't have anything to add except I appreciate hearing all this information. It's great. So thanks to everyone who's doing all that.
Joyce?
I have nothing to add other than I will be in touch with everybody on a one-on-one email just to find out if the mailbox is available, or is there another place that I could leave a report at your residence. And Jerry, you're coming home soon?
10 days.
10 days, okay. I'll catch up with you when you get home, or I could mail it. But I'll contact you.
I'd rather you leave it there now.
Okay, I'll contact you when I know you're home.
Okay.
And Evelyn?
Thank you.
Sure. Evelyn, do you have anything else?
I just, Maggie, do you know when you will know if we're allowed back for actual meeting?
As Susan said, I'll reach out to Mike Riley, the chief of police, who is during the state of emergency, is the director of the town's emergency management team. So
Yeah.
I'll reach out to him for some guidance with that.
Okay.
And I'll get back to all of you.
Thank you.
And Sandy?
The only thing I wanted to mention, I don't know if any of you are familiar with, but the library, our town library is doing an excellent job with virtual options. I actually attended a cooking class one night that they offered for free. And, I think it's something that we need to be thinking of for some of our presentations. I don't know if our presenters would be willing to do that, but it was excellent that people could call in or they wrote into their questions and the woman answered them. And it was very good. I don't know why we couldn't do something like that as well. So I think it's something we need to be thinking about.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
What I've learned from our neighbors is that they believe that they're reaching people, as Chaz had mentioned earlier, who and for folks who may not have desired leaving their homes before for whatever variety of reasons, be remote or virtual programming attracts people we were not even aware of. So several of the other councils on aging are pleased that they're reaching a different audience.
Right. Other than that, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And Maggie, did you have anything else?
Just what Sandy, what everyone has been saying about a different style of programming, whether it's presentations and lectures or exercise classes that we have a teacher videotape or videotape a teacher and post that in a couple of ways. Art classes. One of the Merrimack Valley councils on aging is doing take-home kits that they make available for people, an art project, and you tune into the local cable channel and you have your kit and you follow the teacher. Crafting, they're also doing bingo twice a week. It's one of the centers that has a very large bingo project, and it's very well attended. So they came up with daubers and paper boards, and you tune into the TV or you can call in. So I think that will be, and all of the directors and Mass Councils on Aging feel that is just going to be a new essential style of programming.
Thank you. And Maggie, do you need anything from us at this point?
I don't think so. I mentioned, and as Jerry had pointed out, doing, a little virus survival kit kind of thing might be nice. I think the group who have donated, they've donated 2 bags of masks to us, and I'll have to count them. I think we probably have about 20 after having given them to the grocery shopper, the volunteer grocery shoppers, and staff members. We wouldn't have enough to give out to everybody who probably needs one. I'm not sure what that looks like. If I can get them some material, they're not a 501c3, so that's a longer conversation about getting them material to make more masks for us. If I could get them fabric or elastics, perhaps it's something that we could ask the Friends group for some support with, and then we could look at making, a kit available to people with gloves, with hand sanitizer. Other than that, I do think that is going to be a need for people. I think I'm just put together, I think this is my 3rd or 4th envelope with masks that I'm sending out to seniors. So I think that will just continue, and would be nice to be able to offer them, to have enough in stock that we could do that. So to be continued.
All right, thank you. Okay, our last item is nominations for the officer positions for the Board of Directors. And does anybody have any nominations? And we will vote on them during our June meeting.
I would nominate Chaz for president.
I will
If you'd
second
like,
that.
if you'd like to accept the nomination.
I third it.
I will be happy to accept it for one more year.
Oh, thank you, Chaz.
That's very kind, Chaz.
Yes.
Do we have any nominations for the vice chair?
Joyce, are you interested?
Well, sure.
I second it.
Okay, and for secretary, I know Sandy, you had mentioned some concerns that you were considering not doing it again.
My position is the board deserves someone that is in the area full-time, and I'm not going to be because next year we're going to Florida in the middle of December and not back until the middle or end of April. If you guys are happy with it, I'll work with it. I'll continue as I am. And if we could do Zoom, this is even better because I can hear everybody. And listen, Jerry's on, if we can do Zoom and some of you be present as well, then it works. But I don't know as it's really fair for me to do that. So I leave it in your hands.
Okay,
I just want to make it known, and I don't want people to think, oh, how can she be secretary and she's not even here? You know, that's all.
I think this Zoom thing is going to become a way of life
I do too.
for a lot of people. So I don't think that that's an issue anymore.
I mean, maybe I understand too that I like it. If I can be present at the meeting, I'd prefer to do that, but you can't always. And
Well,
this is
Sandy,
great.
you
You can join, Jerry. You know, all this time you weren't able to.
Sandy,
Well,
you do
exactly.
a much better job than I would sitting there. So I think you do an excellent job, even though you're enjoying the sun and sand.
I do too, and I think it's so gracious of you to do that while you're on vacation. So I thank you, Sandy.
All right. So we have myself as the nomination for chair, Joyce as vice chair, and Sandy as secretary. So we will make those votes during our next meeting. If anybody else has anything else they would like to discuss.
I have a question.
Sure.
The people who are on the telephone, like Evelyn and Maggie, can they see us?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, I
Well,
miss your
actually,
face.
It's nice
Well,
to see all of
I'm
you.
on the phone. I'm just using the phone. I'm not seeing anything.
Oh, okay.
You're
I
one of the
called in
lucky
first. I'm doing both. I called in first, and then I decided I called in a little bit early, and I thought, oh, well, I should just connect, and then I just decided to keep going with the phone.
And then the second part of my question is for the next meeting, if it's not in person, will they send us out another ID number to connect to?
Susan says yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I will work with Maggie a little bit more one-on-one and how to host a meeting herself with the Zoom tools. And then if she's comfortable with it, I'll just relinquish it to her, or if somebody else wants to do it. And, you know, she can make the determination as to whether or not she wants additional assistance for a little while or not. I'm willing to help either way.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Terrific.
Okay, with that said, would somebody like to make a motion that we close our meeting and
I'll make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
All right.
And I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. All right, so our next meeting will be June 15th and to be determined whether we'll be meeting via Zoom or in person. And our meeting is now concluded at 1:55 p.m. on May 18th, 2020.